You were created to create.
And now that you're here, the only way to unlock and unfold that is you find ways to continue to create.
When you stop learning, you stop growing. Your biggest purpose is how are you going to crack the code on you?
All right, we're back. We are back. Your boy Matt Lee is back with another Tune In Tuesday topic for you. And I appreciate you joining me again for another Tune In Tuesday. And again, continuing to grow the knowledge and the mental attitudes and awareness and shifting and growing is really coming back to why is this important? Why do I even do this, right? Why does this even matter? And so much of this is just realizing how much we actually have at hand to shift and to change and to grow and to expand this thing called life, this experience of what life is and how we show up in this life. And, you know, and what I wanted to share in today's Tune In Tuesday talk was just getting back to realizing that in the way that we are perceived in witnessing and experiencing life, so much of us get convinced that, you know, depending on where you grew up or who your parents were, your circumstances, you know, your quality of money, the lifestyle that you have, whether it's good or bad, like really is going to dictate who you are as you grow up and you become an adult and you start to take on this thing called life. But although that is true, right, more of the importance needs to be shifted into our ability to adapt and to grow into who we want to be and who we want to continue to become. And so Tune In Tuesday, again, is an effort and really a focus on what is it that we need to put our attention on that allows us to shift and not, again, settle into feeling like we're just this average person with nothing to offer, broken and stuck to our circumstances and to what is happening around us, right? This gets us out of that place of feeling like there's nothing I can do or I'm just a victim to what's going on, which I completely understand. And, you know, shedding light on the importance of where are we going with everything that we want to be, that we could be, you know, those desires you had when you were a kid. Like, so this all comes back into our ability to adapt and to grow into a new way of being and becoming. And so another topic to add to that, you know, Tune In Tuesday is really understanding what does this look like for me, right? And so one of the biggest things that I could give you is what does this look like when we are shifting into one of the most powerful forces that we have, okay? And that's what I want to expand in. So this is well, let me back up. This is the most crucial thing that we are utilizing and partnering with every single day, okay? And so I want to talk about this word called faith, right? So faith is understanding that it is not just this absent thing that we turn off or on, right? You're always using faith. Faith is a force, okay? And so the question with that I want to ask you starting off is, where are you placing it? Where are you placing your faith? Now, for me, maybe just like you, faith was more of, again, a religious term or concept and growing up, you know, faith in a higher power, faith in a God, what did that look like? What was that? And so expanding even more so of what this faith is, right? And getting us to understand how we are constantly using it is my goal in today's Tune In Tuesday. So when we get to this place and we realize that, you know, faith is always at work. Again, it's not something that we turn off or we turn on. We are always at work with what's going on with it, how we're utilizing it. And it's either building your life or it's breaking it down, okay? Depending on where this faith is going. It's either building your life or it's breaking it down. And so much of that is people just, again, they realize that, oh, well, if I'm not in a religious space, if I don't believe in God, or maybe I do, that's where faith comes into practice. Like that's when it's important. But faith is a force, okay? Even if we are to remove this idea of a higher power or God or spirituality in any sense, right? If you just take that out of the equation, having faith in yourself, right? Having faith in others, having faith in what your life could be or become is really an important force that we have to utilize and we have to understand even more so. And so every day you're putting your faith in something. Okay, that's what I want to just bring us into, this understanding that whoever you are, okay, wherever you're at and whatever you're doing every single day, you're already putting your faith in something. Maybe it's that something is going to work out, or maybe that it's that something may fall apart. And, you're either putting faith in yourself. Often we can be putting faith in limitations, right? And whatever it comes down to, like, it's actually, again, building up something within us or in our life, or it's breaking it down. And so I wanted to utilize, what does this look like when we partner with faith and we are expanding into what faith looks like in the core four, okay? Create, love, the grind, honor, right? What we talk about so much in Allergic to Average. And so the thing is, so many people realize at some point they need faith, right? Faith in themselves again, or faith in a God, faith in something higher. And the issue isn't ever that you're lacking faith. It's more about where are you directing your faith, okay? So this all comes back to, sometimes people feel like they don't have enough faith in themselves or in others or in God. And it's not that we lack faith. It's where are we actually directing our faith? Where are we actually, drawing our awareness of what faith is, or where we're placing that? And so you're always using faith, and it's actually being harnessed and fed into really more of where you're putting your awareness with where your faith is going. Again, in a positive sense or in a negative sense, right? So faith isn't just something that, you utilize and you believe that things will go right. No, faith is believing something, period. You don't only just have faith whenever you're believing in something positive. And that's where I feel like sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm lacking faith, or I don't have enough faith. And that's not the truth. We're always utilizing faith. And so in that, we have to come back to realizing that your faith is always at work, and your faith is just point blank, period. You're believing in something, okay? Again, where are you directing it? And so, and examples of that would look like, hey, when you stress, which I understand and I completely comprehend stressing, right? This is almost a natural part of what life is, but we get to start to demonstrate a newer way of believing in something that allows us to maybe stress less, okay? And so when you start to stress, though, and that becomes the dominating thing in your mind, well, you start to put faith in, something will go wrong. In any area, wherever we're starting to stress, in my own life, in my workplace, in my family, your faith is actually fed into this belief that something is going to go wrong. Okay, when we have doubts, a lot of times we doubt, okay, that can be a normal part. But when we allow it to just stay at that, your faith is actually drawn into limitations. I'm more concerned, or I have more faith in believing that I won't be able to, whatever limitations, circumstances won't allow. Like, that's where you start to focus on that. But when we have like confidence, right? When I start to show up with confidence, what some people call fake it till you make it, right? I say, own it till you become it. But when we get into that, when we start to operate within confidence, you are having more faith in growth. That's what confidence allows you to do. That's what confidence says. That's what that speaks to. So what you consistently expect is really where you're placing your faith. So if I'm constantly and consistently expecting things to go wrong, things to not work out, something to be broken or end up with chaos around it, like that's where my faith primarily lives, right? But if I am a person that is drawn into a little bit more optimistic or optimism, or I'm a little bit more optimistic in general about what could it be, or having faith in like, this will go right. I will figure this out. We will do this. We'll get through this, right? My faith is actually in something higher. And so you get to decide, and we get to dictate, where's that faith going? And so being allergic to average an individual that is not settling and not allowing your faith to just be almost hijacked by the dominating force of fear that's so relevant. It's so obvious. It's just so strong around us, right? Being allergic to average means you become aware of where your faith is going, right? What you're putting your faith in, where you're partnering that. And even when it's not in the place or in the position of where it should be, learning to alter that, learning to redirect and refocus that faith and what you are, where you are sending that, where that is going, is really the gift that we have. And so what does this look like in the core four, right? So when we talk about create, right? You were created to create. We are creators. We are commanders. We were created in the image, in the likeness of a creator. And through our beliefs, again, our faith, through our thoughts, through our emotions, our feelings, our experiences, our results, we're creating things. We're creating experiences. We're creating results. We're creating an actual life that people can witness and demonstrate. Not to mention our very own self. And so we're in the commander seat of being a creator. And so the question becomes, where are we creating? How are we utilizing that? So when you put your faith in your ability to create, whatever that looks like, right? You become proactive. You become solution focused. You become intentional. When you see yourself as a creator, you show up as a creator. But when you have faith, or you have this belief that there's nothing that you can do in that space, there's nothing that you could create, there's nothing that you have to offer, or that maybe what it is that you want to create isn't important, that's how you start to show up. That's how you start to experience and really witness what this life is in your own experience, right? And so when you start believing what you start believing, you start building, okay? And out of that, you start to experience the truth behind it, wherever that faith is. So if it's in the fact that I can create, that I'm here to carry a solution, I'm here to carry something that matters, I'm here to bring a change, like whatever this looks like, because I believe that we are all meant to be that. We're all meant to do that. You can actually put yourself in that position because your faith allows you to show up in that way. But your faith is directing you into really the way that you want to show up, or even sometimes you want to show up, but you have faith in something on the opposite spectrum. So you show up in a different way, contrary to how you want to show up. So this faith thing, it really does matter, right? It really does, and especially the way that we're showing up. And so if I put my faith in more of the negativity, more of the scarcity, more of the fear, which I'll break down a little bit more in the second of the core four, love, right? Then we start to witness life as being something that it's like you're putting, when you start to allow yourself to put your faith in the inabilities and the limitations, right? You start to become stuck before you're even ever able to get started. And this has been, for me, something that I've witnessed, I've experienced, and when it comes to lack or limitations. And when I start to put my faith in, the things won't work out, or that's going to be too hard, right? Which there's still some things that I wrestle in my own life, in my own story of trying to demonstrate that and be that. Then a lot of times you are stuck before you can even start. So you're either creating your life or you're confirming why you can't, okay? You're either creating your life the way that you see it or you want it, or that you believe it's possible, or you're confirming why you can't have that. Okay, depending on where you're putting your faith when it comes to create. Okay, so what does this look like whenever we look into faith in love, or maybe what the opposite is? Faith in something else, right? So when you put your faith in love, right, you move with patience, you move with understanding, you move with strength. You show up with a capacity to be able to do more, to become more, because that's what love is. That's what love allows us to be. And so when I believe there's purpose in this, there is growth, there's going to be something out of this, right? Whatever scenario I'm showing up to, there's going to be something good out of this or from here. Then that allows me to show up in a much more powerful way. Okay. But whenever I put my faith in fear, or I allow fear to be my dominating focus of where I'm putting my belief in my faith, right? Then most people have this, fear that, it won't work, or I don't know if I'm actually enough, which I completely understand. Or if I do that, I'm going to get hurt, or I'm going to be laughed at, or I'm going to look less than. Right. So we start to put our faith in, this negativity, and we start to, instead of allowing fear to just be something that we acknowledge, we see, we know is an option, and we put our faith back into love, and we remind ourselves, and we continue to grow ourselves in that, right? That becomes a game changer in the way that we are showing up and being allergic to average, or just kind of settling and taking what comes. And so, fear is just misplaced faith. Okay, that's what I wanted to kind of end on the core four, or on the love of the core four. Okay, fear often is just misplaced faith. And so, again, we still have our faith at work, but when we misplace it into this idea of what's going to go wrong, right? In both scenarios, we're still using our imagination to play out a scenario and to play out a story of what this is going to do, how this is going to go. But in one scenario, or should I say, in one opportunity and one option of this, when we place our faith in love, that allows us to at least be somebody that can grow with stability, to grow in strength, to grow with patience, and even more understanding, because that's what love is. But when we misplace it and we put our faith into fear, it becomes a cycle that keeps you stuck and keeps you in this illusion that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that you have. You're not good enough. Okay, whatever those lies are. And so that's really the difference I wanted you to see when we're looking at the second of the core four, which is love. Now, what does this look like in the grind? Okay, in showing up and the execution and the action that you're taking every day, as well as in the people that you are collaborating, that you're working with, or we're at least meant to in this life. So the positive faith in the grind would be, you put faith in the grind. You trust your efforts will compound over time. You show up even when it's slow, even whenever, it doesn't feel like the needle's really moving. And you believe that your work matters, right? Again, not necessarily always what you're doing, but more importantly, how you're doing what it is you're doing, right? That's what it looks like to show up in the grind and to show up in the work that you do and the execution that you take on when you have a positive faith behind that. What does the negative faith look like in the grind? Well, if you put your faith in this isn't going to work, you quit before you could ever become or start or see. And so a lot of times whenever we know, hey, this is, there's work required to get to this level, to be this, to do this, it's going to require me to, have to put in this time, put in this effort, put in these reps, try again, what feels like failure, and then try again and try again. And so a lot of times we can keep ourselves stuck or even, tormented mentally, because before we ever start on doing or showing up or going for it in the grind, we start to put our faith in, but what if I try? What if I do that and it just doesn't work out or it fails, right? So it then dismisses us from even, showing up or trying or knowing the truth of what this would have become, what this would have developed into, what this would have allowed us to. And so, the results in any one of our lives, the results in your life that you want are on the other side of the reps that haven't been finished yet. Okay. The results that you want, the results, even for me, that I want, I got to realize they're on the opposite side of the reps that I haven't finished yet. They're on the other side of that. Okay. So it's on the opposite side of where you actually feel like the fear is keeping you, protected, or keeping you, in this okay box to just show up. On the other side of you showing up and putting your faith in, okay, let's do the work. I believe in myself. I can do this, right? I can take this on, even if it's a process. That is where we find the results that we are hungry for, that we desire, that we're looking for. And so that's so much of what that looks like when we show up with faith in our ability to take on the grind and to do the work and to execute and whatever that looks like. And so the fourth one is honor. Okay. So I wanted to draw this comparison. What is faith? What does positive faith look like in your, and when we carry this thing called honor versus when we don't? And so when we do, when you put faith in honor and you allow yourself to utilize that, right? You start to find yourself to trust people a little bit. And I know that gets harder and harder at times. And sometimes in comparison to what we see go on in our world and crazy scenarios and shocking things happening from people that you would never expect. And it gets really tough to trust people. And I totally understand that, right? But to some level, to some degree, there is trust that we are actually meant to have in others, that we need in others, and others need in us, that actually allows us to continue to move in all of these areas, creating and loving and taking on the grind. And that comes through, this bridge with honor, right? It allows you to trust people. It allows you to find and show respect for people. It allows you to, in a nutshell, which is what we are meant to do, build with people. That's part of the grind. That's part of collaborating, right? And synergizing with others around you. Success, growth, any of these, being allergic to average even, is not a do it yourself. It's a do it together type thing. And so, when you start to put your faith in this positive area of honor, what this actually looks like and what this can actually unlock, this you start to actually see that there is value in others. There's actual value, and you can actually find that, and you can actually experience that, right? It becomes tangible. There's strength in unity, right? There's opportunity in finding unity amongst your neighbors, your coworkers, your community members, right? Your family. And so that really becomes unlocked. But when we put our faith in ego and that you need to protect yourself and that, it's only about you, then it's now become me versus everyone else. No trust. I don't trust you. I don't trust them. I don't trust us. No, there's no room for collaboration. There's no room from growing and synergizing with others, right? Because I don't have faith and I don't have a belief. And so the number one thing that I want you to remember is ego, though, when we don't show up with honor, we don't allow ourselves to show that and demonstrate that for first ourselves, but then others as well. Ego will more and more isolate. Okay, that's what ego does. It actually isolates you, but honor multiplies you. And it does the same to others. So ego, on one side of the spectrum, it keeps you in this prison cell, right? Even if it doesn't seem that way, right? Even if it doesn't feel that way, it keeps you isolated to yourself, not feeling the need or desire or the importance that others are important or a part of this. And it keeps you stuck while honor multiplies and continues to allow you to expand and grow. And so the last thing I wanted to end on is, where does this all stem from? Like, how do we go in, utilizing our faith in a positive way when it comes to creating, to loving, to the grind, to honor? What really dictates that? What is really the fundamentals behind your faith? And really that comes back to, what you feed your faith matters. Okay. And it's a shift of awareness by what you are feeding your faith and what you're putting your attention on, what you're allowing yourself to find to be important and to put your faith on as important, right? That actually becomes the experience of what we take on and what we can control every single day. And so your faith grows where it's fed. And so a lot of this is, hey, it's just simply, what do you watch? When it comes to shows, social media, any result of that. What are you listening to? Who are you around? And what you repeat mentally. Okay. So those 4 things really stem into how you're feeding your faith. What you watch, what you listen to, who you're around, and what you repeat, what you mentally rehearse, right? What you mentally rehearse becomes more and more what you're feeding your faith. And so if you're feeding it fear, then fear grows, right? If I'm feeding my faith fear, that's what's going to grow. If I'm feeding my faith with more of this ability to become more that I can, right? With love, with kindness, with joy, then my faith grows into something powerful that unlocks things that the ordinary, an ordinary person that thinks this is far-fetched, this now becomes tangible and as a process of living and growing and expanding and becoming more. And so your environment is either strengthening your faith or it's weakening it. Again, by what we're listening to, who's around us, what we're watching, and what we're mentally rehearsing, what we're allowing to be on repeat within our mental activity is really what's feeding our faith and convincing us of where we're at and what we're doing. And so to end this, okay, just to end this talk, because again, your faith is a force, and how you're using that force, as I bring it all back, really comes back to how are you feeding your faith? What are you feeding your mental activity, your mental attitude, and where you're placing your thoughts and what you're mentally rehearsing? Is it on things that are more dominated by fear and what you see happening around you? Or is it placed into something higher, more elevated, more enlightened, right? And so, again, this is something that I've talked about in talking about, where you place your focus. Where your focus goes, that's what grows, right? And that's where you're leading energy. And so much of your faith is an energy. It's a force that allows you to really move through the hard, the scary, what life we experience as a natural part of life. When you feed your faith with things that are bigger and more powerful, create, to be able to love, to be able to show up with action and execution. And when you begin to feed your faith with honor, a higher sense of respect for yourself, for others, this changes everything. This allows us to show up and to be the difference, to live different and to be different. And so I wanted to just let this be something that allowed you to kind of challenge yourself and, hey, where am I placing my fear? Because again, we don't lack faith. Okay. A lot of times we are lacking on where are we actually directing our faith. It's not an issue of faith. It's an issue a lot of times of where's my faith being directed? What am I allowing myself? Sometimes that's consciously, I'm aware of where I put my faith, or I'm unconscious. And even in the religious space, even in church, there's a lot of people that know what faith is supposed to mean, or having faith in something bigger, having faith in something greater, but they are still, even in a religious, standpoint, sometimes we still find that they have more, faith in what's going to go wrong, what's not going to go right, what's going to happen if this doesn't work out. And so we have the ability to shift our faith and our focus on where do we want this to go and how do we want this to grow. And so your faith is a force. It's powerful, and it's continuing to put you on a path of either building or breaking down the person that you're meant to be. And so where are you utilizing that? Where are you placing that is the question I wanted to submit to you today, in your faith being a force. And so that brings me to an end of another Tune In Tuesday topic. And again, as always, I love and appreciate you guys. Let me know in the comments, maybe it's through a message directly to me, to Allergic to Average, of how I can continue to serve you, or maybe elaborate any feedback. Again, I always appreciate, and as always, I always appreciate your time and the fact that you guys have been watching this and spending time with me here on Tune In Tuesday. So let me know. And again, as always, we got gear on our site, the Doers mug, as always. And so until next time, it is me, Matt Lee, in the studio. Another Tune In Tuesday. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. I'm out.